What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of Sony? PlayStation, the Spider-Man movie, or their cameras? Whatever it is, it's probably good because Sony has a reputation for making quality products. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was once one of the most innovative companies in the world. With the pace it was going, it even looked like it would dominate the tech industry for a long time. Hell, even forever. But that didn't happen.
Sony had the hottest product.
Yeah, they definitely did.
What's it like now?
I don't know, there's a lot cheaper options.
Decades of domination replaced by stagnation. Sales for most Sony products are flat or falling.
At the beginning of the 21st century, the empire started to crumble. If you look at their direction now, Sony has become quite a diverse company. It offers everything from financial services to cameras, music, movies, even phones. Notably, PlayStation is one of its best sellers now, but it was once the biggest player in the electronic consumer market. Currently, around 1/3 of Sony's revenue comes from its game and network segments. With the quality of the products it had, and its amazing innovations, Sony would have easily been the Apple or Google of the consumer electronic market. But that did not happen. So what happened to Sony? Where did Sony miss the mark? The story of the company that is now a multinational conglomerate called Sony started right after World War II in the Nihonbashi area of Tokyo. It was started by Masaru Ibuka. Initially, it was a very small electronic shop that was started with a capital of just 190,000 yen. That's an equivalent to $527.27. In May 1946, Akio Morita joined the company, and the two of them named the company Tokyo Tsushin Kogyo. War-torn Japan was working towards building the country again, and their way of rebuilding the economy was through development and manufacture of technology. The government was in full support of the business, and Masaru Ibuka took full benefit of this opportunity. While he was visiting America in 1952, he learned that AT&T was starting to license out their transistor to other companies. Masaru's company had not yet expanded much since its inception, and neither had it been able to bring any successful products to the market. Unknown to him, his decision to license the transistor for the use of his company would be a game changer. After coming back to Japan from America, Masaru convinced the Japanese government to pay the $55,000 licensing fee to AT&T. He decided the best thing to do would be to use the transistor in radios. Thus starts the journey of Sony. The founders decided to rename the company Sony, and the first product to be launched under the brand Sony was the radio TR-55, which was released in 1955. From this point on, the innovation and development of Sony knew no bounds, at least for some time. The company released a newer version of the radio, TR-63, in 1957. It was an instant hit and became the first transistor radio to sell over 1 million units. Now, you might wonder why this radio was so monumental. Not only had they improved the transistor technology, but they had managed to make the radio portable, which meant it fit in the pockets of the user. The TR-63 not only made Sony a known name in the US market, but it started a new industry of consumer microelectronics as a whole. By 1968, Sony had 5 million units of radio. Sony continued to innovate and develop iconic products throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. In 1960, Sony made the world's first transistor television. Then they made innovative color TVs. But it was Sony Trinitron that was launched in April of 1968 that took things to the next level. Within a short span of its launch, it became one of the most loved TVs of that time. Every household now wanted a Sony TV because nothing compared to it then. Sony played a huge role in making the Japanese electronics industry successful around the world. Sony charged a premium price for their products, but with that came products of great quality. No other brand could beat Sony on its quality. Before this, people associated Japanese products with low quality. Think of how we think about Chinese products now. When we see made in China on any product now, we automatically assume it is of low quality. People had the same perception towards Japanese products before Sony. Sony paved the path for other Japanese brands to be known as a quality product in the world. During the 70s, they came up with their video recorder, which sadly did not perform too well because it was too expensive. But Sony was not about to give up, and they were about to bring another revolutionary product, the Sony Walkman. This completely changed the way people listen to music and paved the path for other portable music devices like the iPod. Before the Walkman, there was no cheap, portable ways to listen to music. How the Walkman came to be invented is rather an interesting story. It was not some device that was born out of vigorous research and development, nor was it some commercial idea. The co-founder, Masaru Ibuka, wanted a portable and light device to listen to music on long flights. So basically, the first model of the legendary Walkman was created for the co-founder's personal use. But Sony decided to commercially sell the Walkman, and they could not have imagined that their product would take the world by storm.
The iconic Sony Walkman. It was the portable cassette player that revolutionized how people listen to music long before smartphones, iPods, or iTunes.
The first Sony Walkman The TPS L2 was officially launched in 1979. The Walkman was such a success that a lot of competitors flocked to make people something like that and sell it. But people were not having it. Sony's products were on the expensive side, but people knew that it would never compromise on its quality. So rather than buying from the competitors, who were selling at a low price, people still bought from Sony. Doesn't this consumer loyalty remind you of Apple? I think it would be right to say that Sony was the Apple of its time. It was also in 1979 that Sony started a life insurance company. Now, why would an electronics company branch out and go into the insurance business? That we don't know. But the diversification of business started sometime around here. It started to get into more diverse businesses. Sony again proved that they knew what they were doing when they teamed up with Philips to invent the compact disc. In 1982, Sony began selling commercial CD players. By this time, Sony was absolutely killing it in the video and audio department, and no competitors were even close to beating them. Sony popularized video cameras by making them cheaper and compact. Sony wanted to make their hold on the music and movie industry stronger, so in 1987, Sony bought CBS Record for $2 billion. Similarly, in 1989, Sony bought Columbia Pictures for $3.4 billion. In the late 1980s, the world economy started to slow down, and the world entered into a recession. This especially hit Japan hard, as because of the economic boom, the yen had appreciated so much that the whole economy was in danger. The Japanese central bank failed to bring proper plans and policies, and the bubble burst. This was only a matter of time because the economic conditions were so bad, the businesses suffered as well. Many people had to be let go, and Sony, like many other Japanese companies, were struggling. But this did not stop Sony from innovating another hit product, the PlayStation. It became such a hit that the PlayStation 2 is the best-selling video game console of all time. It would also be one of the last revolutionary products to come out of Sony. Not to say Sony has not come out with any good products since then, but they've not been able to meet that level of innovation again. So what went wrong with Sony after the 1990s? The economic condition of Japan had already impacted Sony gravely. On top of it, the global recession of 2008 and the economic crisis after that did not help. The devastating earthquake and tsunami of 2011 that hit Japan was like salt in their wound. The company was doing so badly that it suffered losses for 3 consecutive years. For some context, in September 2000, Sony had a market capitalization of $100 billion, and by 2011, that had decreased to just $18 billion. Of course, the bad economy and the natural disasters were not in their control, but where Sony went wrong was on many things it could have controlled. Sony once had a sort of cult following, and call it arrogance or unwillingness to adapt, they let their previous success get to their heads. The executives at Sony were certain that their consumers would keep on buying products from them. The competitors would prove them wrong. For some time, Japan dominated the consumer electronics market, and Sony would not have met their decline had this remained the case, because the consumers did not have much option. Soon, competitors from Taiwan, China, and South Korea started to enter into the consumer electronics market with their new innovative products. Sony forgot that the market is run by the consumers and their demand. The competitors came out with innovative products at a cheap price. Now the consumer did not care how long the product lasted. They cared about what could the product do. Durability was not a problem as the products were cheap and they could be replaced. Sony started lagging in the innovation department. They also failed to realize the importance of software. Sony had top-notch hardware, but the problem arose when it refused to see the importance of software. The integration of hardware with software became equally important. Sony was way behind on the software side of the business as well as the smartphone side. They failed to realize the importance of these markets, and the competitors took over the market share. Along with this, the Japanese administration is rigid. Creativity and new ideas from young people are not encouraged, and complete authority of the administration is expected. This leaves little chance for innovation in the company. After seeing where the company was headed, it did not change its business model or reduce the price of its products. They were adamant that Sony's products were better, and hence the high price was justified. While they were doing this, the competitors were rapidly taking over the market share that Sony once dominated. Gradually, Sony lost its market share of its consumer electronics side of the market and was no longer the prominent player in the market. While saying this, we cannot ignore the fact that Sony is still doing pretty good for itself. It's just that it has to some extent lost control over the industry and market it once dominated. Sony has a very diverse portfolio. The company generated $82 billion in total annual revenue in 2022. Most of its revenue comes from its game and network services, which consist of 31.58% of its total revenue in 2022, followed by electronics products and solutions, which consist of Sony's 21.46% of the total revenue. Another of its lucrative businesses is imagining and sensing solutions, which consists of 12.15% of its revenue. It's also considering building factories for smartphone sensors.
And Sony Group is considering investing several $1 billion to build a new factory to make smartphone image sensors in western Japan's Kumamoto prefecture. The company plans to break ground on the plant as soon as 2024.
Its image sensors hold around 42% of the global market share. As of August 2023, Sony's market cap is $100.17 billion. PlayStation now holds almost 70% of the global console market, and its goal is to sell 25 million consoles this year.
Sony expects to sell 25 million PlayStation consoles this year. That would be a record for any generation of the device. The gains are expected as supply chain problems ease off.
It is very difficult for people born after the 1990s to grasp the cultural impact of Sony. It revolutionized how you watch TV, listened to music, and captured memories. It was once an integral part of the life of people, just because everything electronics was Sony. Like I said before, Sony to that generation was what Apple is to this generation. Its products still have the same top-notch quality, and those who use its products have nothing but good things to say, but you cannot help but notice that this once legendary company has lost its charm, at least in the consumer electronics market. Now Sony has become a tale of a company that was too proud to adapt according to the market. It's an example of how fast things can go wrong if you're not willing to adapt. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did on this episode. Looking forward to seeing you all next week. Intellectual Digest out.